It is Friday, January 15th, 2021. I'm Pastor Thor Ramsey with Center Church. This is Gospel for Five, where we take 5 minutes out of our day and focus on the gospel because Jesus is the gospel. So yesterday we ended with this very depressing list. Again, the emphasis of verses 16 really through the end of the chapter is keeping in step with the Spirit, what it means to walk in the Spirit. And this is just pragmatic stuff. This just means, again, we have this daily battle between really doing the will of God and following the gratification of our flesh. And I've emphasized again, not all gratifications of the flesh are evil. Most gratifications of the flesh are just how God has designed us. It's when we live for those things, when we live for the gratifications, that there is a conflict between the Spirit and the flesh. But you can walk in the Spirit and fulfill your God-given desires in a godly way, right? Within marriage, right? You have sexual desire, sexual fulfillment within marriage. You fulfill it. Nothing wrong with that. So the desire of your flesh is fulfilled in your marriage, and it's not done in an ungodly way. So Paul's telling you here how it's done in an ungodly way. And if this defines your life, he's saying, then you're not headed for heaven. You're not a true Christian. And he gives us this list. Sexual immorality, if that's a continual part of your life, you're probably not a Christian. Impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, which is deep hatred for others. This talking about relationships here. Strife, jealousy, fits of anger. I always get convicted by that one. I know that during the last, since the lockdown, my patience is worn thin. So I really find my temper struggle. So I hear that one, and I feel deeply convicted when I hear that one. Rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. So this is not the entire list. Things like these. Saying, if this is what defines your life, if you say you're a Christian, Paul's saying you're not. So that is the issue. That's the reality. These are the facts. But unfortunately, we don't live by facts, do we, most often? We don't. We live by feelings most of the time. So he says, I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit, now he gives us the fruit of the Spirit. This is the contrast. The fruit of the Spirit is love, right? Now, love sounds very abstract again, but we went over Sunday. Love is outwardly focused. They're not abstract. We have love towards God, love towards our neighbor, and both those things, both those types of love manifest themselves in action. When we love God, we want to do what he says, and most of the time what he says has to do with how we love our neighbor. Paul told us, you want to fulfill the law? Love your neighbor, and it takes action to love our neighbors. So we have love, we have joy, we have peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. I think that's what he's telling us. Here's, love your neighbor. If you're doing these things, if you're loving your neighbor, then generally you're going to have these characteristics: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness. Now we could take time, really, if we were doing a series on this, we could take time on every single one of these characteristics and unpack it from a biblical standpoint. But here we have just this general list of the fruit of the Spirit contrasted with the flesh. And they're pretty drastic contrasts, aren't they? Let's contrast a couple of them before we end this today. Sexual morality, love, okay? Those are contrasted. Now we could break that down and how they are contrasted. But sexual immorality generally is self-centered, selfish. It's about fulfillment only of self, whereas love is focused on the other and the pleasure of the other. Joy compared to impurity, peace compared to sensuality, patience compared to idolatry. It's like these are pretty contrasting lists, right? So generally, most of us will look at the list of the fruits of the Spirit and say, we could certainly, we desire all these in greater measure, but if you contrast it with the list of the flesh, right? I hope the list of the flesh is like, we're not really checking those off in our lives, hopefully on a daily basis. Because if we are, Paul is saying we're in deep, deep spiritual trouble. All right, we'll pick up Monday right here at the fruit of the Spirit at verse 22. What's God said to you today? What are you going to do about it?